Hi, and my name is Johnny and I teach technical events. And today I'm going to be focused on managers. And the beauty of the managers is that they get to have control over the budget, they get to organize and make sure things are running to schedule. And what I'm going to show you guys today is a bit on Excel. And we're just going to create a basic budget template in Excel, get it to work out some of the formulas for it, and also get it to present as those formulas in a pie chart, which is a nice visual representation. And this isn't an extensive one. It's just something quite simple, just to get you around using Excel, using some of its functions, and getting us familiar with how it works. And it's a great tool, especially when it comes to keeping track of financial income, outgoings, expenditures, stuff like that. It's really good at that. So something that we're going to be creating today is going to look something like this. So we've got some subheadings going on there. So we've broken it into different categories. We've got a pie chart in there, and then we've got also, as an extension, got another table at the bottom, which is to do with tickets. But the main focus that I want to focus on is just these three headings here: the venue, event performers, and staffing costs. So I've got a blank screen here. One of the first things I'm going to put up is we're going to make two total bits. And the reason I'm going to do two total bits, so if we just flick back to our example, I want to put a projected budget and I want an actual budget. Now, the reason I've got two amounts, a projected amount and an actual amount, is sometimes we can go and do some research. Okay, well, this is what I think it's going to cost based off what I found online, based off what I've spoken to, based off something I've done in the past. But there's always room for negotiation, and this is where managers can come into their forefront, and they can negotiate costs higher, especially if you're working with the same supplier. You may get a discount rate. So having a projected rate versus how much you've actually spent could always differ. So I'm just going to put in here a projected costs total, and then I'm going to have an actual cost total. So let's just make both of those. I'm just going to increase that cell. Make it 24. I'm going to increase that also to 24. And then I'm going to spread it across 4 cells. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click something called merge. Now this whole row, I'm using the web version. You can use the desktop version. It has the same functions. If the desktop version has probably just got more functions available. But in the web version, this shortcut toolbar here has merge. But if you don't see that, you can just click in here and type in merge, and it will come up, and it's going to merge my cells. So that now spans across the 4 cells. It just looks neater. This is what I like to do. It makes it look neater. Again, highlight those 4 bars. I'm going to hit merge. Let's make both of those bold. So next to these, what I'm going to have in these cells adjacent to them, there will be the totals. So just as a reminder, I'm going to put a pound sign in there, so I know for later on those are going to be my 2 total cells, my projected cost total and my actual cost total. And as we go down to these next cells, what I'm going to put in here, I'm now going to start filling out my first table, which is my expenses. What do things cost? And I'm going to put them into categories based off the area of where I'm spending it. And to keep it quite simple for this video, I'm just going to use a budget with 3 categories. That's my venue costs, my staffing costs, and my performer costs. So the first thing I'm going to put on this side here is I'm going to have a category. Next to category, I'm going to put my projected costs. And then I'm going to type in the next cell, actual costs. And then I'm going to have a cell for comments. So you can see that I can't see the full word. So rather than clicking on the merge, I'm actually going to click wrap. And what that's going to do is going to wrap my text so that I can see all of it in that one cell, and do the same thing for the next one. It's going to wrap my text so I can see everything I've written in that cell. Let's make this comments cell a little bit larger. And I can stretch that from the top. If I just hover over the edges of the column widths, my mouse will change, and that means I can reshape it. That's what I'm gonna do there. Again, I'm just gonna increase the font here, just to make that obvious that these are my headings. Projected cost, actual costs. Right. Click on category again, I'm gonna wrap that. Let's just stretch that so my whole word is visible. Now, I'm going to change something from my example, and I just want to make it just a little bit clearer. So for my first section, which is just going to be costs relating to venue, I'm just going to put it to the side. So anything in these first few rows that I'm going to import is going to be costs related to my venue. So if I do room hire, and then the next row, I'm going to put in equipment hire. And I'm just rounding these figures up. You can break them down into other rows if you wanted to, but I'm just going to use those two columns. I'm going to try and keep this really simple. And then I'm just going to finish that category off with a subtotal. I might put that in italic just to show that isn't a separate expenditure. This is just a subtotal, and later on we're going to import a formula that will calculate everything in the rows above, will give me a subtotal for this category, which is my venue. Let's make that bold too, just to make it stand out. All right, so the next category I'm going to put in, it's going to be on performer costs. Again, I'm going to click on this cell, and what I'm going to click is wrap. I don't want it to merge because I don't want it to span off across more than one cell, but I do want to see the full word. So I'm going to put performer costs. And then in here, I'm going to type band 1. Then I'm going to type band 2. So band 1 may be my headliner, band 2 might be my support. And then I'm going to finish off this category with, again, another subtotal. And let's make subtotal italic, just to make that obvious. And then I'm going to put in one more category, and this is going to be based on staffing costs. Again, that spans over one cell, but I want it in one cell. I'm going to wrap it, I'm going to make it bold. And my staffing costs are going to include security, event staff. And then I'm going to round that out again with a subtotal. Now, this is where the comment section is going to come in really handy, because I could break that down. Event staff, who does that include? It might include a lighting engineer, and venue manager. But at least that comment is going to give me some breakdown of what the costs are relating to when it comes to the event staff. I'm just going to make subtotal italic. I'm just going to input some random figures. Just to give you an idea, okay, well, how is the formula going to work? So this is what I want to talk about next, is inputting the formulas into Excel. That's really going to save us a lot of time when it comes to budgeting. So in this first one, I'm just going to use some random numbers just to get it going. So actually I'm going to put 500 for room hire, and then I'm going to say for equipment hire, I'm then going to put in 150. Now I want my subtotal. I could do this manually, but where Excel is going to really come into its own is I'm going to put in some formulas, and it's going to work that out for me. Now there's two ways I could do this. I could manually enter in the equation. So I could put equals sum, and then that's telling Excel, okay, you want it to do a particular function, which is the sum. So it add up all particular cells you select, and then it's going to spit out the total of that. And then if I put open bracket, that's going to then tell Excel what cells do you want to target, and I can click and drag. If I had numerous cells, I could click and drag all of them, or I can click in particular ones, and then I'm going to close that parentheses or that formula and say I only want it between these two cells, hit enter, and then it was going to give me the total. It's going to work that out, and I'll show you another way to do that in a minute. So we've got the figures in here. I've put in 500, I've put in 150 for the equipment hire, and then it's worked out the total for me. There's one more thing that's going to make this look a bit more presentable for me. I'm going to change, let's just highlight all of these cells. Here I've got my cell formatting. Now at the minute it's on general, so whatever I typed in there, it spat it out. But I'm going to change that to accounting, and it's worked out in accounting is American dollars, but I want to do it in English pounds, and I've changed it. And then I can do the same here, even though I've not inputted any figures yet. I can change that cell to accounting and change that to English pounds. So when I get over there, so here we can go, actually I might have made a save in there, so 450. And then this has actually cost me more. It's going to cost me 200. Now, the subtotal for the actual costs. So before we wrote the formula in, this time we're going to use this tab. I'm going to click insert function, and this is going to give us a range of functions that it can do. We're just going to use the sum because all I want it to do is add up the number of cells I tell it to. So I'm click sum, hit next. Then it's going to ask me, well, what cells do I want to include in my sum? I'm going to highlight these two, and then going to hit insert, and it's going to place that figure in that cell that I've highlighted. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put in some more figures into my other categories before I move on to putting into a pie chart. So let's put in some more figures now for my projected costs on performers and in the staffing costs. Now let's go back to our projected costs, our projected cost totals here, and I put two reminders of where I want that to actually show up in these cells. So I can put my total here. Now again, we can do is two ways of inputting the sum, but all I want it to do is add up a number of cells and spit out the total for me. So in my projected cost, I'm going to go to all my projected subtotals. So this one here, and then I'm going to hold control, and then I'm going to click the next one, or all of the subtotals I want in my projected cost column, and I want it to spit out the total of all my projected costs. I'm going to hit enter, and after I've closed off those brackets or the parentheses, and it's going to spit out my cost. If you see this sign, don't worry, it just means that the cell isn't big enough, so I'm going to stretch it out, and there I have it. And then I can do the same thing for my actual cost. This time I'm going to use my formulas. So with the cell highlighted where I want my total to go, hit function, hit sum, and this time I'm just going to click, hold in control, all my subtotals I want to go into this sum formula, hit insert, and it's going to appear there. Now another thing we can use to give us a visual representation of the figures that we've got on our budget sheet is using a pie chart, and it's really simple to use. I'm going over to the insert tab on Excel, and I'm just going to hover over this pie chart here. Now there are a few things that the pie chart needs in terms of to get the visual representation we want it to do. There are a few things we need to point it to in terms of data or the cell information for it to spit out what it is we want it to spit out. So I'm just going to right click on this, and I'm going to click select data. And the first thing I'm going to do, because it defaults to rows, I'm going to change it to columns. And in this source field here, this is where I'm going to point it to the certain cells that I want it to represent, well, I want its pie chart to represent. So I'm just going to click on each of the subtotals. So I've got one for venue, one for performer costs, and one for my staffing costs. And they're going to represent the data I want this pie chart to represent. I'm going to hit OK. And so far, this is cool, but I want to know, well, what is 1, 2, 3? I want to know, well, what does orange represent? What does the green represent? What does the blue represent? So there's still a few more things we need to tell the pie chart to look at. So I'm just going to click series 1. And what that's going to do is it's taken the data that's in those cells and assigned it to the color or the individual pies, as we want to say. And I'm going to go across to format, give this a title, and this is a pie chart for my projected costs. Now I'm going to go down to my, forget legend, I'm going to go into my series 1, and I want to show the data labels. Now here, which is what I want it to spit out, my percentage and the value, I'll have that. However, I want it to sit on the outside of my pie chart, so I can see here the percentage of where some of my costs are being spent. So I can see that 41% of my budget is actually being spent on the venue. I can see that 24% of my costs are actually being spent on staffing. And that's a great visual representation when it comes to having to show either stakeholders or anyone that you're working with where the actual budget is being spent. That's really useful. The pie chart, it's visually, it's a bit more stimulating than it is looking at cells, and it's a good way of just showing you're working out. Now, not all events are ticketed events, but what is important to know, if it is a ticketed event, what do we need to make, or what targets do we need to set in order to break even and cover our expenditures? So what we're going to do here is input another table down here, but this one is going to be mainly focused on the ticket income. I'm just going to write in here tickets. And let's make that bold. Right now, let's just put full price. You could break down your tickets depending on if you were going to do concessions, if you were going to do under 18s, you'd write that on a different row. For now, I'm just going to put full price. In my next column, what I'm going to do is have a quantity column. So I want to know at full price how many people have bought tickets, or how many projected tickets do I need to sell. And then I'm going to have a subtotal column. I'm going to add in a comment section. So I'm just going to increase the size of this, make it bold. Let's just move, cut, paste that. I'm going to move that down just to marry up and match what I've done before. So I'm only doing full price tickets. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the full price in this full column here. I'm going to charge tickets at £15. And then I'm going to aim for a generous, I'm going to sell 75 of those tickets. And then going to enter my sum formula. This is where it is going to be slightly different, because I don't want it to add the two cells together, because that's going to give me, that is going to give me a different number. That is going to give me 15 plus 75. What I actually want is I want 15 to times 75. So I'm going to click my first cell. I want my first cell to times by my next cell. So I want B25 times C25, and then I'm going to close my formula, and then it's going to give me how much that working, it's going to give me my multiplication working out. And then I'm going to change, so my first cell is actually going to be an accounting cell. It's going to be in Great British Pounds. My next cell isn't, that number can stay there, but my subtotal is going to be accounting, and it's going to be in Great British Pounds. Now I can see my actual costs versus my ticket income, even my projected costs, I'm still operating at a loss. So what I'm actually looking for here is an indication of how many tickets would I have to sell and at what price for me to at least break even. If I type that into 100, I'm still operating at a loss. But if I upped my ticket price to £22.50, this is where we start to see some sort of profit. So there we've been able to use Excel to put together a very, very simple budget. We've got 3 categories of expenditures: the venue, performer costs, and some staffing costs. We've been able to make a visual representation of those subtotals using a pie chart. And we've also been able to predict how many tickets would we need to sell at what price. And it's giving us a subtotal to see, are we working at a profit or are we working at a loss?